He had heard the news from his Aunt Marlene. Your dad's in the hospital again. She went on, this really could be the end. And your mama, God rest her soul, sure picked a stubborn and hard-headed man. Yes, she did, was all the reply that would come through his lips. His mind went quickly to all the times he'd prayed for his old man. Hadn't called him Dad in years. Wait, he called himself. She's still speaking. I told him you would come by in the morning. In the morning, he shouted. On the inside. What are you thinking? You ain't got no right to tell him that. But into the phone, he simply said, I'll try. And hung up the phone. John struggled so hard trying to imagine what words he could possibly say to make his old man believe. What will it take? What will it take? Falling asleep that night, God began a process of reuniting a prodigal son and a wayward father. And he did it in a dream. In the dream, John watched a conversation between God and a man that looked a whole lot like John. And here's a quick look at the conversation. The person, Lord, please heal my relationship with my dad. The Lord said, ask him to forgive you. The person says back, don't you remember what he did to me? The Lord says, yes, I do. He hurt you very badly. The person says back, do you know how hard that is for me? And the Lord says, I know how hard it was for me on the tree, forgiving those that nailed me there. The person said, okay, but you'll have to go with me. And the next day the son goes to the hospital to visit his dad. Though old and sick in body, the son is still intimidated by the man his dad was in his youth. They spent a little time talking about the food and the weather. And as time came to leave, the old man growled, said, I know why you came to see me. You want me to tell you I was wrong. And I'm not going to do it. I was no harder on you than my dad was on me. You just take that crap and you're God to somebody that cares. Gosh, remember God sent him. And the son was shocked and blurted out, no, Dad, I came here to ask you to forgive me. And he was rising up, coming here now. For never being man enough to stand up to you when I was right. And for letting fear bully me as a grown man. The old man just stared at him. But he went on. It's my fault we never had a relationship. I loved you even if you were a mean old man. And I'm just sorry it took me all this time to be man enough to tell you. Waiting on you to change to have a relationship with you was the stupidest thing I've ever done. And I'm sorry it robbed us both of a lot of good years living in the past. The old man just motioned the son out the door and shook his head. The son goes out in the parking lot and calls out to God. What a mess I made. I let Dad push my buttons. Again. Oh my. I've messed everything up. The Lord answered back and said, did you do what I told you? Yes, Lord, I asked him to forgive me. But it didn't change anything. Oh, yes, it did, said the Lord. It changed you. Now, when the phone rings, I want you to get to the hospital as fast as you can. And do not fear. I am with you. Change of scene. The old man sat there in shock as his son left the room. What could he say? He had his defenses all set up, the perfect answers ready to go as to why he was right. And then there was that dream from this morning. What a dream it was. God speaking to me. Imagine that. Asking me, What will it take to make me believe in Him? And me blurting out, if you're God, make a man out of my boy. Make him stand up and face me like a man. I've tried to make a man out of him like my dad did me, but I never could. If you can do that, I'll believe. Change of scene. Just now the phone rang. It's the hospital. Mr. Owen has had an event. He's on his way to surgery. He said to call his son. And it was this blazing light. It hit him between the eyes. Tears filled his eyes. Not now. Not today. I'm not ready to say goodbye. Lord, help me. Then that still small voice, I am with you. Go now like I told you. The way to the hospital was just a blur of cars and traffic lights and fears and tears as a 20-minute drive seemed to last for hours. Big sliding doors burst open and he hurried into the main lobby. The elevators are on the right, he thought to himself. If I can just find what floor, Dad. Whoa. Dad, I haven't called him Dad. Man, I must be losing it. Help me, God. Just then, as if on cue, a man touched his arm. You must be John. Your dad said you were on the way. John turned to see a rather average man walking step by step with him. The elevator nearest you is the fastest. We'll ride together. It's the 5th floor. John said, who exactly are you? Well, I'm Gabe. But it's not time for that now. The elevator door opened. Together they made a non-stop trip to the desired floor. Wait here, Gabe directs. Points to a tiny room just off the surgical waiting room. I'll be right back. And he paused and said softly, don't worry. It will be all right. By the way, your dad left you this note. A note, John whispered. He was shaking as he looked at the envelope in his hands. What was it going to say? Did he dare to read it? Was this really happening? But his thoughts were pushing his fingers to open it and face it once and for all. On the front it simply said, son. John could not recall his dad ever calling him son. Yet twice today he'd heard it, and this note says, son. Son, if you're reading this note, I didn't have time to talk to you in person. I want you to know what a miracle happened to me after you left this afternoon. You know I need a new heart. In fact, I bet you've talked to that God of yours about it. Well, let me tell you about yesterday. I was sitting in my bed thinking about you and your mom, and I seemed to hear her say in my mind, Carl, you're running out of time. And I pushed it out of my head just in time for your loudmouth aunt to come in that door. Didn't even knock. Said you were coming to convert me or some such. And I tossed all night preparing to put you in your place. I had all my defenses set. Then I had this crazy dream. What will it take? What will it take? What will it take? I kept hearing that phrase over and over, and finally God spoke to me out loud in the dream and said, what will it take to convince you that I'm God? And then out of my mouth came the words, if you're God, make a man out of my boy. Make him stand and face me like a man. I've tried, but I couldn't. If you can do that, I'll believe. Now you know what happened this afternoon while you were here. Let me tell you the rest of the story. When you walked out the door, God opened the door of my heart. And I couldn't lie to myself or deny the miracle I had witnessed in you. How exactly God had proven himself to me. I asked Jesus into my heart this afternoon. If I live or if I die, I have a new heart. Your God is my God. I'm sorry for the time we lost here, but eternity is ahead. And your mom is there. I'll call you tomorrow. Love, Dad.